our quality was bad. Like it wasn't as good as our competitors. We would get like a 1-star review and our sales would climb up the next day. It made no sense. But we were so early in that category and like everybody was running out of stock. And so like you couldn't do anything wrong basically.
What were you doing before owning your business?
Yeah, so I was employee number 2 at a Y Combinator company. And so, yeah, I think, my title originally was like director of business development. And then I ended up becoming the head of sales, like after like maybe a year and a half. And so helped take that company from like 0 revenue, 0 product and everything to like millions in revenue a year within the 2 years that I was there. And then,
Nice.
And then, yeah, left kind of to start this.
That's amazing. How were you guys selling?
Back then?
Yeah.
You mean the software company?
Yeah.
Oh man, it was a lot of cold outreach. Yeah, honestly.
Wow.
So yeah, that was like when LinkedIn was gaining popularity and like all these like sales automation tools. Like we were one of like the first clients to use like some of these big companies now, like SalesLoft and I forget who else we were using back then. But yeah, we basically had like teams in India that were like scraping a bunch of leads, and then we were just sending out hundreds and hundreds, if not probably thousands of emails every day. And then it would just like stack up meetings with our sales team, and that was kind of like their first evolution. This is like 2012 to 2014. So
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
a long time ago.
And what made you leave that company and jump into your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think, at first I thought it was for freedom. I'd read like the 4-Hour Work Week, and, you kind of envision this like beautiful lifestyle, like working from your laptop, like in a hammock with like, I don't know, like a Corona or a margarita, like in your hand or whatever. And that was, I think, what I originally envisioned. But I think, when I really reflect back on it, I think it was more around control. I think, I'm a confident guy. I had already built this other company, that had millions of like revenue and however much in valuation. And so I think, once you've done it once, like, you believe obviously that you can do it again. And then the idea was like, well, like, why do it for somebody else, right? At that point. And I remember I was kind of doing the math. It's like, okay, well, like the best tech startups will sell for over 100 million. And then here's my equity percentage. And then that's if, there's no more dilution and we sell and I vest all 4 years. And then kind of going through that math. And I was like, wait, like the outcome of getting to 100 million valuation is not that high. Like the likelihood is not that high, but like my expected value is not that much, especially relative to what I think I can make on my own. And so even though I was, probably like 20, 29 or so, and I had like an insane comp package as the head of sales, I was like, man, I don't know if this really like makes sense. And then, so like one of my best friends from college, Nick, and I like, had, really gotten closer a lot through partying, truthfully, but we were always kind of like, we'd joined startups together back in like 2011, I want to say. And so we were always kind of like brainstorming ideas and just kind of excited about starting a business. And then I was kind of a little bit frustrated with that company. I think he was at a place where he was like, okay, I'm also ready to like do something on my own. And so we kind of transitioned into building this business together.
That is so cool. What made you jump into Amazon? And I believe from our conversation, you did private labeling initially. What made you jump into Amazon, and how did you find your first product?
Yeah, so I guess like a quick backstory on that. So, I quit the job, the sales job, no real clear idea of what we were going to do. It was just like, okay, have an important role. I feel like I owe it to this company, like since I helped start it, like give like long notice. So we gave like 2 months notice. And then we knew that we were going to build something, most likely in e-commerce, just because we had a few friends that were in e-commerce, had done well. So we're like, okay, well, it seems like business guys can do this versus like, obviously, if I'm trying to build a SaaS company, especially at that time before AI, it's a lot harder if you're not technical, right? And so we knew we were going to do e-commerce. And then so for the first Well, actually, my business partner came up with the first idea, like literally like the week before my last day. And then so I was like, okay, we're gonna build this like men's lifestyle company. Kind of like for the person, we love Tim Ferriss. So like for the person that loves Tim Ferriss, like kind of the intersection of like health and technology, design. And we're gonna feature products like that, and then we'll buy it wholesale and ship it to the customers. And we took a lot of inspiration from a company called Huckberry at the time. And so we were doing that for like 4 or 5 months. And then we just realized like, oh man, this is so hard. Like managing inventory, like building the brand relationships, getting like acquiring like customers. And I remember like being really like frustrated, and I like ended up forecasting out like, okay, even if I just want to make like basically making 75K, which is less than what I was making before, but I just like, how long for each of us to make that? And I think it was like 18 months, even though we were growing really quickly. And I was like, oh, whoa, I'm going to run out of money like way before that, probably in 8 months. And so I was like, I need to find like this passion project is great, but I need to find a faster way of making money. And then, so, at the time, like Smart Passive Income was a really big podcast. And there was all these podcasts talking about like side hustles. And then I just remember one of them, like that had like a great title to the episode, was like, I don't know, this person that made like 400 grand a month in like 10 months. And I was like, that sounds insane. And it was like someone that was doing, I think, retail arbitrage or private label on Amazon, one of those. And then both my business partner and I listened to it and we're like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. And I think at the same time, like we were contemplating, actually, which is hysterical now, like buying and selling items for eBay. So like private label, but for eBay. And then, yeah, we received like an Amazon package one day, like at my business partner apartment. And then it was like, wait, we buy everything on Amazon. Like, why are we selling on eBay? And then kind of that podcast click, everything kind of like clicked at the same time, but it wasn't as like common back then to sell on Amazon. This is back in 2014. So and then it's like, well, we just literally Googled like, can you sell on Amazon? And then like, sure enough, like a torrented course link, I think for ASM3 popped up. And then it was like, whoa, this is like a course that's literally going to teach us how to do this. So then we like download it. And then we're like, okay, the assignment is we need to watch this in the next like 2 days or 3 days or whatever. And truthfully, we just like slowly let that, or not even slowly, like very quickly let that old website, like the men's lifestyle business, die. And so, yeah, immediately we just got super excited, like researching products and, kind of following the criteria of like, oh, it needs to fit in a shoebox and not breakable and like simple to use. And so we both had some cash set aside, and so, because I was actually planning on traveling for a year. So I'd saved a ton of money, which is how I was kind of using for like, I guess, my startup capital plus like living expenses was from that. And then, so instead of like, I think what most normal, like sane people would do, like launching one product at a time, we're like, no, we're going hardcore, especially because I have like a shot clock in terms of when I run out of money. And so it was like, okay, let's just go with 4. We'll do small order quantities. We're going to test a bunch and then just see kind of what happens. And so, yeah, we launched all 4, like kind of like February, March of 2025. It's just a few months later after like literally found the course. And in the first month on Amazon, we like passed the last like 5 months on our own website. And we're like, wait, margins are better. Like, and even though most of these products ended up failing, like, the margins were just really low, or like they didn't take off as well as we wanted. We understood like that this was a super viable channel to sell, and we just need to get better at product selection and development, and that we would crush. So we just kept testing, and then sure enough, we hit our first like home run product that was selling like hundreds of units a day by like May. So like 2 or 3 months later. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got started.
Wow, that is pretty cool. And how amazing to define this opportunity back then when it was still on the rise. It was still not a lot of people knew what even Amazon FBA was, or they, like you said, you didn't even know that you can sell on Amazon.
Totally.
I'm curious to know, do you remember what market research tool did you use at the time?
That's a good question. I don't think any existed.
So how did you do your like product research? Was it just like, hey, let me try this product? and see if I can sell it? Or how did you find products to sell?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if Jungle Scout, because Jungle Scout was the first like Chrome extension that I remember, but I think that the way that they taught you back then was based on your BSR, which is obviously how Chrome extensions work today. But it was like something like, oh, find a category with like sub 10,000 BSR or something like that. And then, and so, yeah, I think we just kind of just sat there searching on Amazon randomly. And then we're like, oh, that looks cheap. Or like, oh, we think we can differentiate this one. We weren't like, yeah, I do vaguely remember, like, I think ASM said like, oh, don't do supplements. Like it's too competitive, which in hindsight, I'm like, dude, that is the mistake that cost us probably tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. We should have absolutely focused on one supplement brand if we had started back then. But it is what it is. But yeah, I think we were just kind of like, we ended up focusing mostly on home and kitchen. We did like, so we started with 4. So it was like, those like whiskey, like ice molds. Like, so we did like some sphere versions of those. We did like the big block ones. We did silicone barbecue grilling gloves, and then those like kind of ski masks, they're called like balaclavas. So those were our 4 products. The 3 were in kitchen, 1 was kind of in sports and outdoors, and we just liked them. But yeah, again, because none of them were breakable, and that seemed to be a lot like simpler. Like we could bundle them into multi-packs. So instead of just buying 1 ice cube tray, you could buy like 2 or 3, and that was kind of like our simple differentiation. Same with the face masks. It's like you would buy 2 instead of just getting 1, and you would just get it at a cheaper price. The one that did the worst was the gloves, and that was the one that we didn't differentiate. And so it was actually really helpful kind of starting with those 4 at the same time, because our learning process was so much faster, because we're like, okay, this one did the worst, we didn't differentiate it, like clearly we need to do more differentiation. And so that's kind of how it all started.
So that was true back then, and it's still true now. That's interesting to hear. So even back then, you're like, we have to differentiate it from other sellers. It was kind of saturated as well when it comes to certain products. And what was your take on it back then?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. I think it's kind of like a ratio of like how much demand is there and how many options are fulfilling that demand, right? I think for barbecue grilling gloves, we kind of came in late. A lot of people had the same idea, and like we came in with orange ones, and everybody else, like all the best sellers were orange. So like, yeah, really there's no reason that you would buy ours unless theirs is out of stock, which didn't happen. And so I think in some categories you could get away with not differentiating if there's not that many options, and maybe you're competing on price or whatever. But yeah, we tried to differentiate. And I think a lot of the time where we learned like tough lessons is we were moving too quickly and kind of being lazy around the differentiation and just trying to hit like top line numbers of like, okay, we need to launch this many products or hit this much in revenue. And so kind of using a lot of vanity metrics. But ultimately we found that there was more durability typically if we did differentiate, or at least try to differ the product in something, even if it's like as simple as a 2-pack of like the face masks versus just buying 1 at a time.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because people say, or even we say, is that Amazon FBA, when it comes to private label, if you did it 10 years ago, it was still very much possible. There was room to find products and categories that are not highly saturated. Now it's almost too saturated for private labeling. You have to differentiate your products. You have to find some kind of an edge that makes you unique for people to buy. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree or disagree on that?
Totally. I think it makes sense. If you're going to invest money that's meaningful to you, which, typically is, because that's why you're starting the business, then in my opinion, you should find a way to differentiate. Then you're going to have a higher chance of success, especially for somebody new. I think there's sometimes like this exception where it's a really new category and there's not many people in it. And then so you want to be fast. And I think you could take that risk where you don't differentiate and you just try to come in really, really quickly. but you're just playing like a higher risk game, obviously, because if you found that product, so could have 10 other sellers. And so by the time you actually launch, you don't know if you're going to be second or 11th. And so, and that's like the risk. So if you're willing to take that risk, then it's fine. But if you, yeah, and I think another obviously like factor to consider is like, well, how long is this differentiation going to take, right? If you're differentiating by a 2-pack, it's not going to really take that much more time, right? Or a colorway, whatever. But if you're trying to redesign the product entirely with new molds and everything else, you're gonna have to go back and forth with your manufacturer. That's gonna add a lot of lead time. And so you have to kind of weigh. Differentiation is just a broad term, obviously, but like some have way longer lead times than others.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I want to ask you, the startup cost that you filled here in the sheet, is that for one specific product that you have in mind, or what was it for exactly?
Yeah. So yeah, I gotta be honest. I mean, I guesstimated. I have no idea where these like startup costs would be because it's been like, yeah, I mean, 10 years, like almost 11 years now. But yeah, I mean, I put like a total, I'm pretty sure this was for all 4 products that we launched. But yeah, I know that I remember we only ordered like 200 to 300 units of each product, and then I put it in my notes, but like we hired a coach that helped us, yeah, basically in the really early days, kind of like hopping on a call with us like every week or every 2 weeks. And he was like, dude, your order quantities are way too small. You're gonna like blow through this in giveaways. You need to like increase it like immediately. And then so we like, I don't know, we doubled it, and we were like, oh my god, this is terrifying. But I mean, everything ended up working out, obviously, in hindsight. But yeah, I remember like, yeah, we totally screwed that up.
Yeah, I bet that must have been scary to be spending that much money. I mean, you guys, I mean, it's decent compared, like, to think about it, to start a business for, and you guesstimated $15,000, which sounds about right. But you're saying that much money you spent was on 4 different products that you guys were experimenting with over the course of 5 months. And
Yeah.
that's not bad at all. I can't think
Yeah.
of any other business that you can start for less than $15,000.
Totally. But I would say that's like only your first order, right? And so I think that's a little like misleading, because obviously you need to have enough cash to support your reorders, like, you know, which ultimately kind of leads to like understanding like cash conversion cycles, especially if you're sourcing from overseas like China. But yeah, I do think that you end up needing more capital to fund the reorders, which is what ended up happening. Is that, yeah, this was like the initial order, and then we kind of just doubled down on the ones that performed. I think only one really performed well. Actually, yeah, I mean, yeah, we learned so many lessons. Yeah, I know there was kind of like a mistake section that we kind of prepared, but yeah, I think we reordered 2. One was the balaclavas, which we learned very difficult lesson in terms of seasonality, because when you're copying your competitors, and then it's like, oh yeah, you can use this for skiing and snowboarding and motorcycle and cycling. And we're like, oh wow, like this product doesn't have seasonality. You can use it for everything, or for anything, right? But not realizing that like nobody wears this for anything other than skiing and snowboard, or when it's cold. And so like basically the price went live in whatever March, and it's like crushing it, but we're at the end of the tail season, obviously, for like United States. And so we do this reorder as if like sales are going to continue, and then it just goes into the summer and just like plummets, of course. But yeah, I mean, a lot of like kind of interesting lessons like that. But yeah, that's kind of how it turned out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And before we dive into the sales of these products, and I'm curious to see which one is the one that skyrocketed the whole thing. And before we reveal that, let's dive into a little bit of the startup cost and
Sure.
the startup journey. So it was a few things that we like to talk about is packaging design and photography. How did you guys find if you remember, how did you guys find your designer and packaging? For packaging and your logo?
Yeah, great question. question. Well, okay, so for the logo, I would say we probably did a 99 designs would be my guess. I either that or like logo tournament. Um, I know Tim Ferriss I talked about in the 4 Hour Work Week. So like that's what we still use that sometimes today for like getting new concepts, new brand designs, that kind of stuff. My business partner taught himself basic Photoshop. And so for a lot of the design, he was doing it in the beginning. And then photography, I forget how I think we just Googled photographers in LA, which now, yeah, we were definitely like overpaying because I think he was charging us like, I don't know, $750 per like set. And I mean, we could do it a lot cheaper now, especially with AI and everything. But yeah, we just looked at his product photography and it was beautiful. Like he was really, really good. Like I think, we were doing ice trays and I remember him doing something to the water, I think like purifying the water so that when he would like, so yeah, and that's something we would never have thought of.
Right.
But yeah, but so that when he's taking the photos, like the water looks like super beautiful, right? And something to that effect. And so he had a lot of attention to detail in that respect that I don't.
You never know how much that paid off because
totally, yeah,
pictures are a big deal.
Exactly. And so yeah, he kind of helped with a lot of that, especially in the early days.
And yeah, that's amazing. What about packaging? Was that all you've sourced everything from China, from Alibaba?
Exactly. Yeah, we went through, got a bunch of samples, and then they had like in-house, like production of packaging. And so they would send us like the die lines or the templates. And then Nick, my business partner, would kind of figure out how to fit everything. And then we just went off to the races. They printed everything and then helped us ship it here. Yeah.
Amazing. And you put here that you guys spent $80 on samples. I'm guessing this is just shipping fee.
Yeah.
The samples for free. You just have to pay for shipping.
Exactly. Something to that effect.
And was that for all four samples? It's probably a long time. I know you.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't remember. Yeah. I would say somewhere between like 80 and 200. Okay. $300, like, yeah.
All right, and for the $10,000, that was for the 4 products over the course of the 5 months for the first inventory order.
That's a good question. I would say probably for the first 2 months, like the face masks took off. We sold out of those in weeks. So, and that's when we reordered going into spring, not realizing that this was really like a ski and snowboarding product. Sadly, like, yeah, there's no brand analytics and all that kind of stuff back then. And then the grill gloves took us the longest to move through. I would guess that was probably like 5 or 6 months, and then the whiskey, like the spheres, took us a while to sell through. I would probably guess like 4 or 5 months, and then the trays with the big square ones ended up doing better. So we probably had to reorder, I would guess, in like 2 or 3 months, basically. So only those 2 ended up continuing. The ice cube, the square trays, like ended up lasting for a while, maybe like a year and a half. And then I think we were so burnt out on the seasonality of the balaclavas, like we just kind of killed that after like the second order, basically.
Which one ended up taking off, that helping you guys through, like to push through the with the business, like to keep the momentum going?
Yeah, so all these were okay, like, and I think that kind of goes back to my earlier point, is that like we learned kind of different data points from each one in terms of, okay, differentiation is important, like, yeah, maybe the market size wasn't as big, but none of these really like ended up probably being more than, like, I would guess 20-30 grand a month in revenue. Our big home run, so yeah, okay, so we launched our first products in March, and then I think right afterwards, like in May, we had like the next products that we were testing. One was like a set of spatulas and forks, like, and then that did okay, but the other product we launched in that following, let's say in the same May, so like 2 to 3 months from when we started, was these like food containers that were like had little compartments that people use like kind of for portion control. And those like meal prep containers, have you ever seen them like on Instagram? And those crushed. Like no matter what, we could not get them in stock. And so yeah, we came out with the first one that had 3 compartments. And like, yeah, you're talking about like, sometimes yeah, like do you need to differentiate? Like we didn't differentiate at all. And in fact, our quality was like bad. Like it wasn't as good as our competitors. We would get like a 1-star review and our sales would climb up the next day. It made no sense. But we were so early in that category, and like everybody was running out of stock. And so we just ended up being super early in this category that was just really hot. And so like you couldn't do anything wrong, basically.
That is amazing. That's so pretty cool.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, everything's basically on fire in a good way. But you're like air shipping containers of these meal prep containers, which is like absurd now thinking about it, especially at like freight prices today. But yeah, you're just trying to stay in stock and trying to expand as quickly as possible. So we started with, a three compartment container. And so, yeah, obviously then we like took all of our money, borrowed money from anyone that would listen to us, and then basically launched like another, we found a better supplier immediately that like had better quality, because like that's the right thing to do.
Was that like the following year?
Oh no, this is like within months. Like
it's within a few months from launching the containers.
Yeah, because then we started air shipping everything to try to stay in stock. We realized that we would still make a decent amount of margin by air shipping, and that it was better to do that and get our average reviews up, and keep the sales history versus like being out of stock for an extra like month or whatever. And so so we launched like different containers, different compartments, so like 1, 2, and 3, and then we even launched another brand to compete with that original brand, and with slightly different containers and variations. But yeah, we basically try to take up as much real estate. I kind of think about like Monopoly. You want to own as many properties as you can, like on Amazon or like listings or whatever. And so, yeah, we basically did that for meal prep containers back in 2015.
Wow, that is amazing. I wanna dive in a little bit more into the progress of the brand and how you guys did it. But before we jump into that, I just want to rapid fire a few questions that are going to be relevant to the to building up the business and the startup cost. The first question is regarding barcodes. Did you guys get your barcodes from GS1 for all these products?
No, we did some like cheap brokerage website. Probably that was like, I would guess like $100. Kind of one of those reseller of codes.
Like one sold on eBay or something?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's actually where we got them. I think it was probably from eBay.
And do you remember how much? Yeah, you said $100 for.
Yeah, I guess it was like $100 for like 100 codes or something.
Got it. Do you recommend doing that now?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're more strict around that now. So yeah, I think we get all of ours from GS1 now.
Okay. And your first shipment, the $1,000, that was via sea?
Yeah, that was probably by sea. Yeah, I think we sent everything by sea back then.
Initially.
Yeah.
And shipping to, so you shipped it to your your house or your address, and then you shipped it to Amazon?
I think so. Yeah, I think we sent it to my apartment, and I had like 3 roommates at the time, so there was 4 of us, and we had like not the biggest apartment. And then we received like 50 cartons, and it's fun because everybody's young and they're like excited for you, so everyone's like helping us like bring them into the apartment, and like and then we'd have to like open them and inspect everything, and just like we were kind of like counting it out, just making sure everything was there. But yeah, I think that sounds right. And then we would eventually drop them off. We'd have to print out the labels for like UPS.
Yeah.
And then they dropped them off like I don't even think I had a car at the time. And so like,
oh my God.
Like, yeah, it was terrible. My business partner was borrowing his dad's like convertible like BMW, like I think 3 Series. And so you can imagine it doesn't like fit many boxes.
Take one box at a time.
Yeah, so we're doing like 1,000 trips to like the UPS stores until they're like, we won't take any more. So we had to go to the next one and then the next store, and it was hysterical.
Wow. That's the price you gotta pay when you're an entrepreneur. Sometimes when you're just starting.
Totally.
And the last question for the trademark is that did you guys apply for one, or is that multiple trademarks that cost you $750?
I think it was one. I think we didn't do it on ourselves. We did like Pride Trademark. Yeah, that's who we use today. But like you pay for like the class and fees, and then you pay for like the attorney to do it for you. And yeah, that's probably what that is.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, let's jump into the progress of the story. I don't want to take away from that because that's where the most interesting stuff are. But I did want to get like the startup costs just to give people an idea of like how much did it take you guys to start this business? Like I said earlier, these are all the costs that we break down through our channel, most of our videos when we're breaking down with other sellers, and when we teach our community and how to start. These are all the costs that it takes you to start your own product, to start selling on Amazon, and it cost you guys total $15,600 to start this business. Obviously there was more fees afterwards, and you mentioned the repurchasing fees. And did you do that through credit cards, or were you borrowing money?
I think in the beginning it was manageable for us to do it ourselves, but I think once we hit like basically like a gold mine with those meal prep containers, that's when we needed to borrow money from like friends and family to get to like to doing the expansion. If we were just doing the 3 compartment containers, we would have been able to keep that with our own like savings and stuff. But because I'm super aggressive, so I'm like, okay, we're taking over like everything, we're expanding everywhere. That's where we ended up needing the cash.
Got it. And obviously, like, you were making that money back, but it's just the delay in payment is why you need, extra cash.
Exactly.
To convert. All right, so I'm gonna jump into the sales. So this is year 1. I have it here. So so that year, did you guys really end up making $2 million in revenue?
Yeah, 2.3. Yeah, I think kind of like round numbers from what I remember. Yeah, it's about 2.3 million in the first year.
That is amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, very hectic. I mean, yeah, it's funny. Like my business partner and I, we got in an argument. This is way back when, before we even started. I was like, "Hey, how much do you think we'll do in December?" And then, and I don't know. He said something very reasonable. Like he's a very reasonable person. And then I was like, "I want to shoot for 500K," and he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, we heard on this podcast that someone did on their 9th month, they did 400K, and that was December as well." I was like, "We have an extra month. There's also 2 of us." Like, it seemed like they were by themselves. Why can't we do 500K? And then, so we kind of agreed to disagree on like this target, but I was like, okay, I'm shooting for 500K. And I think he probably said like 100 or something. And then, those meal prep containers ended up doing like over like $1 million in that single month of December. So it was like it's just like absolute insanity.
How did you guys feel? Like, what was your experience like going through that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. We felt very fortunate. Like we definitely felt like we hit this like gold mine that like we didn't want anybody to know about. And so yeah, I think we were definitely in kind of a little bit of a scarcity mindset, I think. Which is interesting kind of looking back on. But yeah, it was crazy. Like we were just like ready to take over the world.
I bet. That must have been incredible. So you guys were expanding the brand to multiple products, multiple SKUs, and you said you were starting another brand that competes with your initial brand. Tell me a little bit more about that. Was that like later that year, or was it the following year?
I think that was all within the same year. Which I think, maybe it was a good idea, maybe not. I think in hindsight, I probably would have taken up more real estate under the same brand first. I think it would have been a little bit easier. So like, our original variations were like a pack of 10. And then when we launched the second brand, we launched it as a pack of 7. And so then you kind of have like they were selling around the same price, but then you could buy the 7 or the 10. But what I would have done, and which is what ended up happening to us, like if you fast forward a little bit, is that other people came in with like 14 or 15 or 20 or 30. And so what we should have done was kind of defend the position, not only with just creating multiple brands, but creating more and more variations that customers could then choose from. And so I think that was like a big lesson for us. As you kind of like fast forward through like the business. And sorry, I didn't update all the product cost and profit and stuff, but I would just say generally we were netting, I think like 10 to 15%, give or take.
Yeah, usually those auto generate when we put in the number of units in here.
Right.
So I don't know if you had an average price to all the products, we can do the math. But usually, if you just put in the number of units sold, that will auto generate.
Yeah, I don't know the number of units sold, to be honest, but I would guess that we sold, like, the average price was probably around $20. But yeah, I guess in terms of margin, yeah, I would say it was probably we would fluctuate between 10 to 15% throughout like the first several years, probably like 4 or 5 years.
Net profit was about 10 to 15%.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing. So you're looking at, so from 2 million, you're making $200,000 of net profit.
Yeah. Year one. Yeah.
Year one. That's amazing. Let's talk about year two. Did anything interesting happen? What changed? You guys grew from $2 million to $8 million in year two.
Yep. Year two. Yeah, we did a lot. We expanded to like UK and Canada. We kept launching more products. What else did we do? We started bringing on more team members, like a head of product development, head of supply chain. I guess heads, but like, yeah, they were just kind of in charge of those departments. They weren't super senior or anything, but we started also, I think at the end of year one, we brought on our first support person, because my business partner was handling customer support, and, even going into like, I think October of that first year. So now we're already doing like a few $100,000 a month in revenue. And then I was like, wait, like, this doesn't make sense for you to be doing anymore. Like, we need to get rid of this. And then, so, both him and I had hired overseas before. He'd hired more in the Philippines. I'd hired more in India. And then he had like a really great former employee that introduced us like to her sister-in-law that ended up being our first employee, and who was with us for a while. And so, those are some of like probably the big updates year two, but most of the growth honestly just came from keeping those meal prep containers like in stock and the expansion across markets and stuff. But yeah, if I were to do it again, I would have, like I said, just really focused on the US market and just taking up more real estate in that, because like, Canada and UK is so much smaller. And so I think that's how I would do things a little bit differently this time around.
And most of those sales were still from the containers?
Yeah, I'm sure a heavy percentage. We kept launching a ton of different products, but I'm sure like a heavy percentage of that revenue was coming from the meal prep containers.
And you guys were still in the launching products in the home and kitchen category?
Right, exactly.
That's amazing. So you're focusing on one category and just like exploding different products and trying to see like what hits and what can stick and also explode at the same time.
Totally. Yeah, I think one interesting lesson as I reflect on it was we brought in the head of product development, and then he had like a commission structure based on like new product categories that he found, right? And like in the profit that those products ended up generating. And then, which I think in hindsight was silly, right? Because Charlie Munger always talks about like whatever, show me the incentive and I'll like tell you the outcome or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing it really poorly, but basically, if you think about really intelligently how you incentivize somebody, then that's going to ultimately lead you to like the outcome or the result that you're looking for, right? And so the idea in general was good of like, potentially about providing commission to someone to be really incentivized to come up with new innovative ideas, but we excluded the existing categories, which means that if they're not incentivized to differentiate those or to come up with new ones, then they're obviously not going to do that. And so that's what ended up leading kind of to the downfall of the food containers, is because that wasn't in his purview of like the agreement, then he obviously didn't differentiate them. And so eventually other sellers came in with like 15, 20 packs, 30 packs, and ended up crushing us. And those products like died very, very quickly, because obviously if you can buy whatever twice as many for like $1 more, you're probably going to buy that. Eventually you're going to have enough reviews that you're going to end up purchasing that one instead of mine. And so those categories ended up dying pretty quickly in like 2017. I want to say so, like maybe about 2 years in.
Oh wow. And what so I'm looking here. I mean your sales didn't go down. Yeah, I can see it here and so you started in 2014, correct?
That's when we did the research, but then our products went live in 2015.
2015. So till 2018 you guys were like your revenue was increasing. Then in oh no, even 2019, I mean you guys had a really that's your highest year yet.
Yep.
And then in 2020 is where there was a dip, and we'll talk about that in just a
Yep.
second. But so if the containers got crushed, you guys kept making more money till 2020. What kept you floating and what kept you ascending?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, we ended up like again, we incentivized him to find new categories, and so we were constantly launching new categories. I had this dream of like I want to launch 15 products a month.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of what we were focused on. I don't know if we ever got as high. I think maybe we got to like 10, 12, but like we were really aggressively doing that. And then post those containers getting crushed, they still had some business. It just wasn't as profitable and as meaningful as it was originally. But then that was a great early lesson that you obviously like learn from. And then in all of our like best categories, that's when we really expanded and did tons of variations. And that was how we really grew the business. And so that's like what leads into like the 2018, 2019 numbers is us like still finding other great categories and really taking up more real estate there. So we hit a lot bigger numbers.
That is amazing. I mean, you guys like kind of learned the formula and the secret to success, and you guys just kept doubling down on it. And in 2019, you guys hit that was your biggest year yet of you hit $30 million in revenue. How freaking cool was that?
Yeah, man, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling.
And what was it about that year? Because in 2018, you went from making $13 million in revenue, which is still incredible, to making more than double. What happened between 2018 and 2019 to give you that big jump?
Well, we had one product go nuts. It was doing like $1 million a month by itself. And then, but the whole category was, we were doing like air purifying bags at the time. We had one SKU that was doing like, I guess 12 million a year by itself, maybe a little more. But then we had all these other products in that same category again. So like, it was like a 4-pack of charcoal bags that was doing the $1 million. But then we had like 8-packs and 6-packs and 9-packs. And then we had different colorways. So the main SKU was gray, but then we had green ones and like light blue ones and multicolored ones. And so we, again, like just really took that learning lesson from the meal prep containers in terms of not giving the customers different options. We just went super aggressive in terms of like every type of variation in terms of quantity, colorway, even shape for these air purifying bags. And that ended up being massive for us.
Wow, that is incredible. And in 2020, before we jump into 2020, I want to know, is there anything like lessons that you guys learned through this journey? Any mistakes that you made that you're like, if I go back, I wouldn't do this? What are some lessons that you can share from this journey? Because you guys definitely learned the formula for success, and I'm sure you've learned from a lot of mistakes as well. What is something that you can share with us?
Oh man, honestly, so many. I think, David from Mary Ruth, I remember telling this, like, everybody, maybe back in like 2018, I would guess, just like, oh, you guys all should, like, a lot of you guys are so good at Amazon, but you're all focused on like different categories and creating different brands. And at the time, I think we were much bigger than Mary Ruth. And so we're like, oh, like we're kind of looking at it more like a finance firm, right? It's like, oh, if I put in this much, and my ROI is this much, and I can turn inventory this much, then like I'm like a money printing machine, right? And then you can figure out like, okay, similar to like how a bank looks at like a loan portfolio. It's like, okay, if I launch 100 products, whatever, 80%, 90% of them will succeed, and they'll return like these kind of characteristics. And so I can fail whatever 10-20% of the time, and this is like the kind of just like the return on invested capital of putting money into this like product engine. But I wasn't really factoring in, or we weren't really factoring in like the compounding of an actual brand. And so obviously Mary Ruth is now way, way, way bigger. And he was definitely right. But I think that singular focus, and I think there's a lot of like, survivorship bias in there. Like, I think he chose like obviously the right category, had a super strong, really focused on the right things at the right time. And so I think that's a lot of it. But I think if I were to go back, I would for sure have gone into consumables. I would have focused on one brand and only done one brand. I would not get distracted by like all the shiny objects of like, creating or doing like retail arbitrage or creating this agency or doing all these things. I think one of the things I remember when we hired our ops person in the beginning, supply chain and ops, we went through a bunch of interviews and there's one guy who was like a killer, and we were thinking about hiring him, but we're like, he's maybe too good. Like maybe like he might be hard to manage. You know what I mean? So we ended up not hiring him, which I think, in the beginning, you're kind of like not as confident and you're like, can I manage this person? And I think that was like a mistake, right? Because we ended up hiring the next best person that we thought would be easier to manage, but like truthfully, just we're less experienced and like not as talented as that other person, truthfully. And so, I think there's like a million mistakes that we've made, still survived, obviously. But those are some of the ones that come to the top of my head.
Yeah, what a journey, and what a lot of lessons to learn from. I think somebody said like you want to hire people that are more competitive. I think it's a good thing. Is that what you look for now when you hire people? Do you look for people that are very competent, even?
Yeah, I would say competent is a big thing. I'm looking for people that can teach me something in their area of expertise, great communicators. People like, one of our values is like extreme ownership. So people that will like really take a project to the finish line. We've worked with so many people that kind of just do it good enough. And then you look at it and you're like, this isn't useful. This isn't going to do anything. And so, those people don't last very long. I think communication, I think, is huge, especially because we have a pretty international team across different countries and everything. So people that can articulate well and, have like honest, real conversations and like get to the point.
Yeah. I know we're getting close to running out of time. Are you able to stick around a little bit longer, or would you like to?
Yeah, I've got another like 5 minutes.
Okay. So I know there's a lot, and I wanted to dive into TikTok Shop. Maybe we can schedule another podcast, because I know that's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Travis asked me to talk to you about. I don't think we can talk about it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's jump into what happened between 2020 and today, and let's talk about the dip. And I think you guys sold the company and start something completely different. So why don't you give us a little overview? What happened in 2020, first of all, because you went from making 30 million to 10 million.
Right. So a few things happened. So in end of 2019, we had one of our main brand got suspended for review manipulation, which was brutal. So that obviously kills revenue, and so you have to do this like whole turnaround and everything. So that was tough. And then so we basically ended up rebuilding the business more in supplements, and so that's kind of why there's a dip. We also had like a small few brands that were not impacted by the suspension. And so those we ended up selling in 2020 to help us kind of like rebuild the business, basically. And so that's kind of why you see like a dip. And then so from 2020 in 2021, it's kind of the transition years, if you will, from like this old like sourced from China home and kitchen products to like rebuilding everything in consumables, like US made.
Oh, sweet. So the supplement company is entirely US made.
Exactly.
And you launched it in 2020.
Right. Second half of 2020, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did it do? How did it do when you guys started it?
It went well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the breakdown of revenue is relative to like the home and kitchen stuff, truthfully, but like, yeah, we did well, like pretty early on. Yeah, we ended up launching 2 brands in 2020 and then a third one in 2021. Again, yeah, should have focused, but we didn't. And in terms of one, but yeah, I mean, those ended up doing extremely well.
And the 2 brands were in the supplements category.
Correct.
And if you can give me like a bit of a quick summary, you guys from between 2020 to 2024, you've made $80 million in revenue, which is incredible.
I think you talking about all the years combined?
No, this is just from 2020, since you guys start rebuilding your brand till last year.
Yeah, I think we did about 80 million. Yeah.
There's $80 million in revenue. I know some of that are you guys just selling on Amazon, by the way?
We do TikTok as well. So yeah, we started in early 2024.
So you started last year selling on TikTok.
Right.
But outside of that, before that, it was just Amazon, correct?
Yeah. So in some ways we learned our lesson. And so we really focused on like the US market, focused in supplements, and didn't do other channels. Like we've done Walmart in the past, and I hope Walmart people aren't listening and hate me for saying this, but it just ends up not moving the needle at all. It's like 2 or 3% of our Amazon sales. So it's more of a distraction and paperwork than actual meaningful addition to the business. Yeah, a lot of people always tell me like, oh, but what if your Amazon gets suspended again or whatever? But I'm like, well, even if Walmart were to represent 10%, which would be amazing, like out of this world, it's like if I lose 90% because it's Amazon, then I still don't have a business regardless, whether it's 0 or 10%. And so it's pretty much irrelevant unless you're able to really get other channels to represent a more meaningful concentration. But yeah, to us, it isn't worth the time investment. We just rather focus on being great at Amazon.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how was your experience with TikTok, though, as an add-on to Amazon?
So TikTok, I love. I think that's like the exception in my mind. Because if you think about Amazon, it's phenomenal for demand capture, right? People search, like whatever they say, like 50% of product searches start on Amazon now. And, they're searching either like the non-branded or the branded keyword, right? And it's not great for discovery or like for demand creation. TikTok, on the other side, if you think about it, you're just on your For You page scrolling through, and then you get hit with a creator video, and you're like, oh, cool. I didn't even know this product existed, but this person is telling me about it. Like they seem to have the same issue, or they're telling me how cool this product is. I'm gonna go buy it. Whether you buy it on TikTok or you buy it on Amazon or Shopify or wherever else, it created the demand because of the way the user journey works on TikTok. And so you can address a way larger market for whatever your product is, as long as it's good for TikTok, right? If it's like something super boring, I don't know, plastic cups, you're probably not going to do super hot on TikTok realistically. But yeah, I think it's phenomenal for demand creation. And so I think it works really well in tandem with Amazon.
I love that. And the numbers that you recorded for 2024, does that include your sales through TikTok, or is that just Amazon?
That includes TikTok as well.
Can you give me an idea of how much TikTok has added to the revenue? Do you know?
That's a great question. I would guess maybe $1.5 million. Then that's direct sales, right? But and then a certain percentage spill over to Amazon. So we call it spillover sales. But like if you were to have never started the TikTok initiative, then it would be more meaningful, like the variance between the two, because a certain amount of people saw us on TikTok and bought on Amazon, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. Where people see something, I do that all the time. I see something,
Totally.
I'll check. I'll go and check Amazon.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather buy it directly from Amazon than try to buy it from a different platform.
Right. Yeah. So I would guess like the total impact is maybe like 1.5 to 2. Like if we had never started TikTok.
And your revenue has increased. And I'm gonna let you go. I know we're out of time. That's the last question. I just want to know, between 2020 to 2024, your revenue was steadily increasing. And by the way, congratulations on all the success. It's really cool and inspiring in so many ways. But you said you built multiple brands in 2020 and 2021. Can you just give me an idea, a rough idea? What are those supplement related brands? And are you keepingly increasing more products within those brands, or what is your strategy like?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're focused on supplements now. We are introducing more products. And just trying to be differentiated. But yeah, I mean, I think right now our vision is just to stay more focused. I think in the past we were like, oh, okay, maybe I want to start this side brand and I'm gonna sell it in 3 years. So it kind of delays an eventual exit. But yeah, I think it took me a little while to really think about like focusing truthfully. And it's like, okay, well, if I can become like the best at selling supplements, then I can come up with more innovative formulas, or I can figure out costing faster, or I can just go deeper in this one category, and it's already a huge category. And so I think that has been like really kind of instrumental for us in terms of just like really trying to be disciplined. We weren't as much in the past, in the beginning, especially.
I love it. Hey, Fernando, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today and sharing your journey, your story. It's really inspiring. It's really cool to see the possibilities in the world of Amazon, and looking forward to filming with you and meeting with you again.
Same here, man. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.